Okay. So hi everyone, welcome to those who are joining live. We are recording this. We're not sure whether we'll make it available or not yet, but as I was just saying, Candace came up with this idea quite spontaneously. This is her passion and area of expertise through her own lifelong journey and through supporting many parents and many youngsters, and she'll tell you a bit about that background. But I think also hearing a lot from me about matric and this and that. And so we made it available to students as well. And there was such a nice response that we did a lovely call earlier for matrics, and it was so fascinating. And I really think worth doing another one again. But it's just a privilege to be able to listen to you, Cand. I lapped up every word. I loved it. And I think everyone's in for a very lovely hour. So thank you for sharing your wisdom and your experience with us.
You're welcome. Thanks, Nex, for the intro. So I have realized that I've got a material where each slide here, I could do an hour workshop on each slide. So we're going to have to see what emerges in this space. And that's why questions, and I've asked for just specific areas of focus. I've actually been training in so I've been ADHD all my life. Long ago enough that I was hyperactive by definition way back then. That's what you were known as, really, nothing more. My mother chose never to do any medication, but she is naturally not ADHD. So she is very structured and very orderly. And we know from experience that a lot of structures serving of us ADHD scattered brain people. And so was very supportive in that regard, holding structure in that. But I was in remedial learning help support from grade 2. In grade 3, at the end of grade 3, my teachers spoke to my parents and said she either needs to stay back or move to smaller classes, and I was moved to a private school. And a big deal for ADHD people is my very first teacher was the headmistress, and from day one, she met me at eye level at the gate. It's still a fundamental memory in my life. And she said, "Hello, Candace." And that welcome and that connection changed the direction of my schooling career. I wasn't academically brilliant, but it went from a place I hated to be to somewhere I felt safe and belonging. And so it opened up the potential of some kind of learning. And so I then stayed at school right through to matric, where I failed my trials. I was in extra lessons of every sort. I got spelling concessions for matric. But as I say, I celebrated my parents celebrated my C's like I had got 7 A's. I told all my friends, you guys did it wrong. Because look at my parents celebrating. There's no, oh dear, you got this or got that. I'd failed my trials and I passed, and I went to varsity. It took 4 years to do a BCom and thought I will never study again. Anyway, it wasn't long before I found myself doing a PGCE. So I'm actually a qualified intermediate phase teacher. And in being at a school, I realized there's a missing link. Like punishment was removed, corporal punishment was removed. I was like, something's missing, and went off on a journey to study emotional intelligence. Actually flew to Singapore and trained with 6 Seconds and hosted their first ever training in South Africa when they came here before they headed out into Africa and that. And then finished, have spent my time actually mostly training teachers and parents. So I founded Contemporary Parenting. I'm the co-author of that course that we hosted for parents for a number of years with my business partner. And then I stepped out to be a mum. Here you can see my son. He's just going into grade 1 next year, bringing up a whole new level of stuff for an ADHD mom as they head into grade 1. And last year, finished a master's in practical theology at a university in the States. That was really transformational for me for a few reasons. I excelled at it, which I have never done at anything academic in my life. So it was amazing to find age, I guess, and interest and skill set coming together for me in an academic space. And so today isn't specifically focused on ADHD, but I am speaking from someone with 47 years of ADHD-ness. And specifically, I found a new level of challenge around it as a mother, trying to hold structure for son, and also trying to parent in a way that he would naturally have a genetic leaning towards high sensitivity. And so am I able to parent in a way that doesn't exacerbate the likelihood of ADHD? Having said that, I am just going to share one other thing. I remember at 30 being diagnosed, well, everyone felt I was depressed. And I used to say my depression is everyone else's good day. I was just so naturally joyful and exuberant, and this crying and a lot of depressive symptoms. I landed up at the doctor, and he had his checklist, and I think there were 17 or 20 things, and I had 3 of them. So he was like, "You're definitely not depressed." He said, "Just answer this questionnaire for me." And his questionnaire, which I believe it, I would hope by now, 17 years later, is more developed, was 13 checkpoints, and I had 11. And he was like, "You're ADHD, not depressed." And I was like, "Well, that's not rocket science." And secondly, please understand that I've got 2 degrees. By then I already got my PGC. I've got 2 qualifications. I've been successful to 30. Like, what are you trying to now drag me? I kept thinking the way he spoke about it, it was like he was giving me a disability. And in my family, ADHD we'd spoken a lot into the gifting of it. The spiderweb brain, the level of creativity. My father is very successful in the business world, and everything is done in large part as a gifting out of ADHD. And so it really was hard for me. I sat there thinking, oh, no wonder parents get so depressed when they hear this is how you see it. And I chose, he wouldn't let me leave without a script, and he gave me a script, and I was difficult and wouldn't even consider it. My father's much more open. At 70, he's been exploring going on Ritalin. But I chose not to. And a year or 2 ago, I have a psychologist, and she kept like hinting at medication. And eventually I said to her, either pitch it to me straight or take it off the table, but you keep hinting, but you've never given it a good shot. So she gave me a questionnaire to answer. And it was fascinating for me, because a lot of the symptoms I would go, yeah, I used to do that. Yeah, I used to do that. No, mostly I don't do that anymore. And impulse control, and some of them were clearly still high struggles. But most of them I had, through awareness, changed my relationship to them. And it was quite mind-blowing to me, because I realized with hindsight, I would have been deeply served in some level by perhaps at least a year on medication or whatever. But the true gifting was to realize, by choosing not and using awareness, I had changed my relationship to a lot of those things. And that is really where we're going to speak in today, is around awareness. So I've just put a brief plan, and as I say, we'll see what we can fit in. But we're going to talk about the how, the inside spaces, outside spaces, holding space, nature space, and then ongoing support. So as Nikki said, it was almost a download. In the space of 20 minutes, half an hour, I wrote the flyer for this and chose the word ritual. And only when I came to fully preparing the workshop, I was like, what exactly am I doing with a word like this, with study? But the beautiful thing is, a ritual is in part habit. So really our lifelong learning is a gift. Like, if we can learn that learning is something we automatically doing, we will always be doing, and actually is something magnificent, habits around it can be deeply, deeply helpful. And the idea that a ritual also has an aspect of holy to it, I want to say. Speaking of holy in the sense of wholeness, of sacred, can allow us a different approach, and we'll get into that more. But I just wanted to draw our attention to ritual. And the how of everything we're doing today is, it's not just what we're doing, it's how we're doing it. And the idea is that our how is awareness. So the way I spoke to the Matrix about it is, partly what we're encouraging here is to study how we study. And that is unique to every person that is going to do this, because how I study and the next ADHD person, or somebody who's not ADHD studies, or whoever you are, is going to be different. And so a big deal here is the awareness. I do, just because I see a lot of ADHD comments in there, and really we could go deep into it. So I'm going to just briefly touch on this. But I've loved the Gabor Maté's. He has a book scattered mind. And his approach and research on ADHD is he talks about ADHD like almost like an allergy, well, a reaction to an allergy, if you want. So we would consider someone with a bee sting or an allergy to oranges as the medical definition is a high sensitivity to. And so ADHD people tend to be people with high sensitivities, or always, I think he said always, but I'm going to say cautiously, which means they tend to be highly sensitive people. And then circumstances or the presence they don't receive exacerbates those symptoms. And so I share ADHD because if we can think of all of ourselves on the spectrum, and you might lean toward all the way to Asperger's, or you might find that your brain is very well integrated and functional, and so you're less sensitive, but the information still applies. So I really am presenting you with a smorgasbord, and you choose to engage with one or two things. So yeah, that awareness is our key thing. All of this is going about studying ourselves and how we engage. For our parents, you're studying your little people or big people, and you're helping them dot join. We call it dot join. Join the dots between when you do this, that works well, and when you do that, it doesn't, or whatever. I've noticed that you really pay attention when this is going on. So you have the opportunity, obviously the younger they are, the more opportunity, the older they are, a different kind of conversation can be had, so potentially lands more deeply. So the first thing we're going to chat to is outside space. So specifically for ADHD, but for everyone, I think personally humans are way more sensitive than we acknowledge in society at the moment, or that is normal. And so how our environment dances with our psyche, our mind, our state of being is, you see the minimalist music movement is a real thing. And so to actually have an awareness and to pay attention to what works well in a space for you, and what works well for you as a parent, and what works well for a child is often going to be likely different, because they just bring up, that's what children do. They like program to bring up stuff we would tolerate normally. So they're our biggest growth points. So the first thing is functional needs. So as I was saying with older kids, water, hydration changes how our brain works. And so I have recently worked out, it's not rocket science, to have, and I do it as a jug. Yes, we've got water bottles, but I like a beautiful jug and of water. And here you see the water I've chosen has mint and lemon in it. Now, the advantage, essential oils have only been a blessing in my life a year and a half, but they have been a real blessing. And both, I have a very high drive and need for variety. So they help that sense. I love a lot of sensory input. And so that makes it exciting for me, because on any given day, I can make a choice of how I'm going to do this. But lemon is a focus tool. So it helps us focus and clarity of mind, and mint does as well. So here you've got a lemon and water. You don't even own essential oils, and actually what's in the water is helping the mind. So that's just something to be aware of. Here you actually get a glimpse of you can see me in the picture here. This is my desk. So color is my thing, part of my variety. And so here, all my pots beautifully divided by color, because it makes my soul happy and I can feel it in my heart. And part of the sensitivity of ADHD or whatever is, or sensitive people, is that there's a high sensitivity to emotions, which is why there's a high reactivity often to things, and our equilibrium is so easily tossed in the wind, more so than people who are very well grounded. And so for me, if my space is colorful, that supports me. Now, it supports me to work, but if I was studying, I tend to find, like right now, my desk faces out on the most magnificent tree and view. But if I was studying, I study and write way better against a wall. So that's an awareness I've picked up in myself. And so the value, I love the idea that as parents, our responsibility isn't just to orientate our children in the world, being able to do this, roles, responsibilities, work, study, but that our responsibility as parents is also to orientate people on the inside world. So yes, you'll only get a lot of awareness as you get older, but what a superpower when your parents help orientate you in your own heart and head. So that's the other thing is ergonomics. Like realistically, it's changed my life having my computer and my neck pain, having a computer at eye height. So it sits on a box on my desk. It used to sit in a number of books, but that isn't. Now it's on a wooden box, and it, again, visually, it's just more attractive, and there's less things to distract me or trigger irritation. That's very low grade. Phones off is a clear, makes sense. But then one of the things I'm going to speak into is just very briefly, people, there's controversy and different ideas about learning style. One of the things I found most helpful is a book called Collaborative Intelligence, and it speaks into focused attention, sorting attention, and daydreaming attention. As soon as I read, it explained something to me. I'm very visually stimulated. So if I am I hate being in a restaurant where there's a TV of any form, because even if it's soccer and whatever, I will not, no matter how interesting you are, not gaze at it. My mind, as soon as it sees that kind of visual stimulation, can't look away. My husband, crazy as it seems to me, falls asleep in front of the TV. That is his lullaby. Now we know based on sleep science and blah, 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 it's not great, but that puts him to sleep. So it is likely that his daydreaming attention is visual. His teachers would probably agree. He is also a sports coach. And while we were reading this, myself and one of his older friends was talking about how does he focus when he coaches, when he's umpiring for cricket. He can focus on balls and that because it's movement. And so very often we want our children to learn one way, but if you are a tactile focused person, you need to be moving for your brain to focus. I mean, it's insane. And sorry, no offense to schools, because my husband's in mainstream education, but schools are not set up for this. Everyone learns as well. So to be aware of that, I know they've got all the wiggle balls and whatever, but that, what does it take to help you visually focus? Also, auditory might be through listening or through speaking to help focus. And then harder on parents, but your children may need more input from you, or they maybe need to throw a ball while they're studying or whatever. The last thing here is just for memory recall, as children are studying longer and longer, is the ideal is kind of 20, I think this is meant to be 20 minutes 5 or 25 minutes 5. But TED Talks I've always loved because they're never longer than 20 minutes, because they know the human concentration span can't stay that level of focus for more than 20 minutes. So they don't do that, but we do that to our children for years and years. And so I really tried to land this with the matrix. Time at your desk isn't productive time. Like, rather don't spend it at your desk and do something else and come back. Then feel you're putting time in, but actually you're not in your brain and you're not actually studying. You're putting time in and writing things while thinking about the party this weekend or whatever's going on. So yeah, and so that helps memory recall. That regular also, if you do a little bit daily and repeat it rather than all in one day. So that regular 20 minutes of study on a subject or half an hour, 5 days in a row, is way more valuable than, in terms of memory recall and retention, than 3 hours of study on one day. Okay, sorry, I just need a time check. Time. Okay. One of the things here that really hit me last night, and I think is important, is we actually remember stuff better if it matters to us. And I don't think we take education as a privilege. We take it as a bore. And in other countries, you've got people being shot, especially women still, education entirely removed. I knew somebody, I used to work with street kids who keep trying to get educated after his family died. He literally swam across the river at Bike Bridge and all that. And one of the boys got on a ship and stowed away and then got thrown off in Cape Town. But these are people who and suddenly when we start, awe itself is being shown to be good for the brain. But when you stop and see studying and learning as a privilege that, especially for women, 70 years ago was almost forbidden. Like you had to have liberal parents or whatever. It can really change our approach, and to try and make that a little bit of sacred. It might be lighting a candle, it might be a flower, it might be like, how in some way could you potentially begin to take learning as an honor? Because I know when we presented at a headmasters conference and Varsity College was there, they were saying the students arrive with two things mostly now. The most common things is anxiety and burnout. And stress itself can cause that, but a lot of times it's our approach to it. It's this pressure, which doesn't help memory or learning or motivation. But if we can try and light a fire inside and see the sacredness of what learning is and the opportunity, I really believe that there can be an entirely different experience. And so what that looks like for each child, each faith, each no faith, whatever it means. But there's a beautiful thing when you start to be mindful around study and connected to meaning and also where you're going. Like I was saying, I've had lessons before where I've spent an entire lesson with my class just going, why does this subject even matter? Like, where will you use it? I've told some of them they meant to come back to me when they're 30 if they've never used accounting in their whole lives, even if they're game rangers. So like, where does this matter and why is it even relevant? How can I information, we know that the brain is built like trees, and I like to think of new information at coat hangers. And if we hang coat hangers and there's nothing for it to hook onto, it's entirely different when we can hook the information onto things that matter to us already, because that has a root system into the heart. So this is something I did for myself at university. I had a poster of a saying I found in a magazine. Rowing was very big in our family at that time. And it just had a saying that helped remind me. That was the one thing I had in front of me on my wall. And then I had a photograph of my boyfriend at the time, who finished his degree in 3 years, not 4, graduating. And every time I looked at that photo, my intention was to see myself in that position. And so to have a visual cue of what your goal is, your bigger goal, might be, can be incredibly useful. And so also with our children, to take a moment, I don't think we do, to be really intentional on the vision. And you can have a visual cue. You can take some time to write a written word about it. What does it feel like? What does it look like? What are you doing? How are you going to celebrate when you feel like you get where you're trying to go? And then emotionally, I've come to understand the power of setting emotional goals. It doesn't always have to be about how it looks, but how do you want to feel? How does that, like, do you want to feel proud of yourself? Do you want to feel empowered? What is that you want? And as soon as we speak into the heart, I recall once having a conversation with matrics years ago in a rural setting. We actually, half the class was busy, and so we were sitting in the dirt outside, and I happened to have emotion cards with me that I owned at the time. And I just sat and I said, how are you all feeling about matric? And they sat and went through the emotion cards, and the things that came up, the pressure, my family's first time anyone can get matric, and the conversations were magnificent. And we went on to have a number of them, and that class had a 70% pass rate that previously that school had an average of about 40. And we really discussed, what does it mean to work hard? What is your goal? And what does it mean to work hard? We used to talk about, okay, the goal's R1 million. Often we use financial. And then we'd say, okay, well, you work hard for that one day for that you get a everyone response on that. And if you've got to work hard for a week to get that, and if you have to work hard for a month and then a year. And so we would discuss it. But these kind of conversations don't appear to be influencing, but reflection, awareness, and how our brain engages with this actually changes how our brain shapes. So a lot of my quotes and information comes from Dr. Dan Siegel. He is the father of interpersonal neurobiology, which is the science of how the brain shapes in relationship with others. And what they know now is that just awareness of how our brain works and understanding the different functions together changes how we shape it. So those are just some ideas about the outside space for study. And then here we have a talk about the inside space. And that is where we're stepping into actually Dan's work, although there's lots of work now around this. But an integrated brain is a brain where we are using what we have. Everything, all the different parts are functioning well together. So ADHD is referred to sometimes is that some of the brain aspects haven't developed, like impulse control is very prefrontal cortex. And it's not a case of they can't, it's a case of more support to help that development and growing happen. And so in here, we want to start to notice what parts of the brain are our children operating from, or we really want to be able to have as much of our brain online when we are studying and recalling, and when we are in our exams, because exams, as I said to the matrix, exams you can consider sometimes they feel like a spitting cobra. And as soon as we go into that kind of stress, not very helpful to remember. So before I do that, sorry. So just to speak into that very briefly, in our house, we use the regulation wheel. Different people use this awareness tool in different ways. But ideally, the green zone here is where you exist when you are relaxed, centered, you're able to focus, you have capacity, you're not in survival mode. Survival mode is our blue and red, where we, blue is that, as I said to students, when you, it's meant to be freeze or faint, but this is what it looks like when you're studying. This is like your whole body language. There's no energy, there's lethargia, there's like a disinterest, it feels like boredom or difficulty, and so we shut down. That's very much the blue zone. And then our red zone is that hyper anxious, heart's racing, we kind of feel a mild panic. Also a quality a lot with ADHD people, like everything feels like a mild panic, or we don't have that hyper stimulation to keep our brain focused. So we create it and then it's ongoing. That's not a scientific explanation, that's my experience. Okay, so that's the red zone, and just building this awareness for study, to have, I said to the girls, to just jot on the top of your page, where are you sitting? Because then you start to notice the difference when you study and where it's going. So that is the regulation wheel as an awareness tool. Now, what Dan uses is takes that to another level, and he talks about the wheel of awareness. And in the middle, you've got the hub. So if you think of a wheel, the hub it doesn't move. That's the centered, grounded, and ideally you want that in an open, peaceful, calm, receptive, clear way. Another thing, he has a book called The Yes Brain. You want that in terms of, you want to be open, to be able to learn. When we shut down, that's very hard. And this is a tool to build that awareness on the internal landscape. So here we've got our 5 senses: touch, taste, smell, sight, and hearing. The power when I'm talking with essential oils that I've come to understand is that smell is a direct doorway to the limbic system. Now, limbic system, just remember the elephant mammalian brain. We'll talk about it more. But suddenly smell and the oils through diffusion, look at me sitting here. I've got all the communication oils going, calming and communication oils for today. And that's an entryway direct to the brain that can support what's going on. Because they talk about gut brain and heart brain and head brain, but the nervous system is almost like the body brain. And so we can tell our body we're safe, and our mind might even believe us, but our body won't. It has to feel safe. Like this rocking is incredibly good for, there's lots of actions. Another one I'll just share quickly physically is that dropping onto your heels, yes, and that rocking feeling. So you're seeing more and more of this as we humans start to learn what we once knew. There we go. I can see Nick's doing you can literally all these yummy things that we can do. So to just build that body safety. Then here we've got sensations in the interior of the body. And the way I've used that to help build awareness, and please tell me I've got it here. Oh, here we go. Do I? So this is something I created, the Gingerbread Journal, and you can buy it from me, or you can just print the pages out. You can get them and make them in Canva or draw them yourself. These are gingerbread, that's my son's gingerbread, to build awareness of the sensations in the body. So here is an example. This is my son, age 5. Shame, I probably shouldn't be reading this, but he says, when he's lonely, his heart is not really there. All the colors aren't there. When he goes for a nice walk, he goes joyful. And so that's a 5-year-old version, but I do the 47-year-old version. We color in together, but I see my journal's not right here. And so that's a way to, you literally close your eyes and notice the sensations in your body. And then you pick up the colors and you draw on the gingerbread creature. If I were doing one now, I can feel like a zigzaggy in my stomach. My left hip feels like a yellow circle. I've obviously done this a lot, so I can do it quickly. It is a skill set you're building. I can feel my throat feels a little bit blue in the center. There is a scratchy like purple around the edges. So that's how I would, being quite right-brained. But it's a beautiful, simple journaling tool. We call it the Gingerbread Journal, that can develop that internal awareness of sensations in the body. Because emotions aren't, this is not scientific, this is a user-friendly version, but emotions are a message from the heart delivered to the brain through sensations in the body. And so when we pay attention to the sensations, our brain can start to get the messages. And a big thing I argue about our education in the world today is that we teach from the shoulders up. And so we walk around as though we're living heads, like the emojis. We don't remember that we are entire bodies. And so that's a way to build that body awareness. And then we've got thoughts, feelings, memories. And then he talks about the interconnectedness, which is the vibe and the recognition of the space between us and others, which is something I could do in a whole nother chat about, but is hugely with our co-regulation and our sense of belonging and safety is big for everyone, but particularly I like the description that ADHD attention deficit is that we tend to be people who are looking for someone's attention to be really present with us, not needing things from us. The deficit is we haven't downloaded presence. Okay, so here's a little basic brain science. I notice I'm swinging between things because I've literally got psychologists and whatever who know this backwards and in their sleep, and some of you who may not know it. So we'll share. But the basic brain science is the brain here. These should really sit on top of each other. But we have the hand model of the brain here, which is also a Dan Siegel thing. If you imagine this in your skull, this is our brain stem. And this is the old reptilian brain. I like to, with kids, it's the security officer. He's in charge of the beams, the trolley doors, the boom. And if he thinks something is dangerous, everything's shut down. Now, to shovel information into your brain or memory is near impossible when that's happening, because literally 80% of blood is drained from the prefrontal cortex. So if we are living in a state of fight and flight, or our crocodile brain is running the show, it is very hard to remember anything. And so literally that's why we've got our regulation wheel. We're trying to build awareness of when we are actually open and when the security guard is running the show. Then when we look at the next part of the brain, assuming we are now safe and secure and we feel happy, we get to the limbic amygdala, all this like center midbrain. And that's here apparently, to look accurate, should have 2 thumbs, but we only have 1. And that midbrain monitors relationship, memory, motivation, and learning. Anybody have an experience where the teacher you loved, your marks went through the week, your subject improved, you suddenly appeared so smart, and you had a teacher you loved? The power of this is that in relationship where you feel accepted and seen and felt and soothed, is that they bring that relationship online. They also bring memory, motivation, and learning. So it's this amazing, beautiful thing. And this is a huge thing of accessing as parents with ADHD children, is what does this look like to build a relationship strong enough? And it's not this. A felt relationship isn't about love. You can love your children. I have a mother who would die for me, but she could never feel me. She could never meet me. Shane, that's quite extreme, never. But it was very difficult for her to meet me in my enormous dramatic emotions. And so she loved me, but we could not regulate off that relationship because my happiness impacted her happiness too much. And so I held the power. And ideally, for regulation, your emotional states as the adult needs to be independent of your children's. So that's, yeah. Okay, so here we've now got the next level. So we're safe and secure, we've got the relationship, and finally we've got the prefrontal cortex coming over here, and that is where our mind makes maps, our creativity, our empathy comes from, our associations, our impulse control, and you ultimately build integration, which is the place where we can access and be able to draw on the different parts of our brain, and they're all functioning together. Is there anything I've left out there? And when we understand this, that's why I'm blown away that children aren't being taught it at school more. When we understand this about our own brains, it changes how our brains form and grow. So, are you all ready to teach this to kids who don't know about it yet? So when we flip our lids, or we get stressed, or we find out in the exam and somebody outside the exam room says to us, did you study this? And you go, I didn't learn that. And you flip your lid, you've just lost access to so much of what you've learned. And so we really want to learn some techniques to calm and center ourselves. Potentially, I've got a calm roller here. If you've studied with, we've got Thinker and Intune, I've got a diffuser going. If you've got sense, that calm, center, and help memory recall, then you can literally be using that in the exam, but you want to have used it while you studied. And that can also help bridge that place towards accessing more of your ability. So we've spoken quite a lot here about this. Yeah. The other thing, if you've got very busy brains for older children, is the idea of a brain dump. So literally dumping what you like, maybe it's in relation to your subject or the teacher you don't like, but to take 2 minutes or 5 minutes on a clock and just write down everything that comes up around that subject. I hate maths. I never get it right. It's always bad. She's terrible. She shouts at me. I wish I wasn't here. Like, to really vomit. I used to say my dad was very good at holding space for me. I would vomit. And even while I was vomiting all this revolting, tearful stuff on him, I'd be going, it's not about you, but I just need to get it out. And so you want to help them get it out. Our minds, for very busy people, I often say if the average mind processes 300 thoughts a minute, we probably process 5,000. And so we've got spider webs and it all hangs and it gets stuck. You want to get that out. It creates some space to breathe. In terms of studying, again, an emotion check-in around your subject can help. I've also, you can download a list, or I can email it to you guys. There is a list. Otherwise, I sell these emotion cards with nature, because nature has so much power, which has been such a pleasure. These were done long before the oils, to find another way to access nature. But also for you, if you're working at home and your kids are at home, a daily emotion checkout by the adults and the children, and an honest one. You don't have to say I'm stressed because I didn't pay the bond, but you can say that I'm stressed, or I'm stressed there's a presentation tomorrow, but acknowledging and accepting all emotions are welcome in a space. All behavior, maybe not, but is not. All behavior is not, but all emotions are accepted. And so to model and show, I call this, it's like a multivitamin, to actually, when you acknowledge it, your sensations, which are expressing through the right brain, talk to the left brain by giving it names, and you're getting right left brain integration happening. And when you do that on a daily basis, the emotions aren't building until you explode in a volcano. they're starting to do a daily dose. And I actually gave these, I developed a different thing I don't have access to anymore, a little emotion people. And I gave a set to my domestic worker whose son was really struggling at a young age at school. And just by doing an emotion check-in every day, she said she saw his marks change so much by the end of the year, because there was so much he was struggling at home life. And by just letting that come into the space and awareness and be named, it changed how he could engage and be present in other places. We spoke about FELSIC. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm doing a quick thing. Growth versus fixed mindset. If you don't know about it, it's very worth finding out. And you're welcome to message me. I don't mind doing some deeper dives we could potentially. But basically, this is to understand that our brain changes and can change. And when things are hard, it's like going to the gym for our brain. But if we believe that we can't change, we won't change. And it makes us a lot less resilient and fragile. And this can be around a specific subject. It can be around relationships. We can have a growth mindset in one area in our life and fixed mindsets in other areas. So to just notice, like, what do you think is possible or not? And this is Carol Dweck's work. She has a book called Mindset. And she, her research has been phenomenal in understanding how much effort is important to recognize, because it's in the effort that gives us capacity. We're in charge of that. Outcomes, we're not in charge of how they go. So this is really, I don't think you'll be able to read it well, but I do just want to share here, because the oils are such a, okay, I'm doTERRA essential oils, and I'll speak about that earlier, but they are pure certified therapeutic grade. They, every bottle, I mean, every batch is tested, checked, no additives, no pesticides, pure. And oils are a way, they speak to different parts of the body. In a non-scientific way, their vibration behaves as a bridge between what we can and can't do yet. And so that's incredibly helpful. So the way I currently use the oils in my world is the smell. Also, I have a perfume bottle that I bought, and I bought it because a friend used it as a breath freshener before she saw clients. It is peppermint. Again, peppermint is a focus oil. I keep committing to add wild orange. And so I found now I sit down, I spritz, I can immediately, even as I do that now, feel improved alertness. And it's lovely on hot days because it's also cooling and it helps focus. So that's a big thing I use. In front of me, I also have some rollers, and then I use my diffuser. It's at my desk. I have one in my desk specifically for that, and depending where I'm at. And so, as I say, the beautiful thing about oils is, I mean, smells, is they go straight into the limbic system. So they can be incredibly helpful in grounding and calming and helping our body. There's beautiful research, even with post-traumatic stress, on the impact of bergamot. And that's smelling it. I think it's 8 times a day, like every 8 hours. That's right. So that is a beautiful opportunity. As I say, we heard a mum who each morning would say blessings over her children while putting them behind her ears and whatever, and doing that and then using them in exams. So the association was with such a positive connecting experience. Okay, I'm going to ask a question. I can see there are a few questions in the box. I'm going to skip a few things and then go to question and answers, or do you want, tell me what you would like. I am at your service. Where's the chat box? Or is someone going to speak up?
I think we should carry on with what you have prepared, Cand, and then if people want to leave at 1 o'clock, they can. If people want to stay on for questions afterwards, then they can, if you have the time, if you have the capacity.
That's fine. Okay, perfect. So vision casting, we've spoken a little bit about, but in part, this is part of the awareness, I believe, that's useful in the Ignatian tradition. There's power in reflecting. It changes how we wire. And so to recognize any subject you're doing, where have I come from? Where am I at today? And where would I like to go? These kind of reflection processes don't have to be long. And then we get to ask, I use prayer a lot. How people choose to do that for their own faith or their own version. But I find specific prayers make a big, big difference. And so part of doing this whole idea is, what does the prayer look like for your child or for you? Because the more specific you can speak in terms of their struggle or them and what's needing support, the more your awareness is going to open and allow that to come into the space. And so, yeah, I have actually made a point. I was saying to the girls, if you take the time to almost let a prayer come through you and write one for studying, it's a beautiful thing to set that intention and say that prayer before each study session. And I can, as I speak, it creates a holding space and part of that ritual and routine. And it reminds us that we are sacred, doing something sacred in the context of something sacred, contributing to a future we will never fully understand, but that will be maybe impacting and doing amazing things down the line. I just wanted to share this because these are the top 7 of the top oils for the brain. Lavender for calming and relaxing, wild orange uplifts, smooths, and energizes. There's a beautiful brain diffuser blend called Citrus Bliss that I certainly have found phenomenal. Spearmint improves focus and attention. Magnolias comforts and soothes. Neroli reduces stress and agitation, and Copaiba eases anxious emotions. And then there's rosemary. Also, I see they don't have it here, but rosemary is amazing for memory, promotes clarity. And the beautiful thing here is doTERRA has a mix here called Adaptive that is literally made up of those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's got sweet gum as well. These 8. And it's called Adaptive because the idea is it helps support our body around adapting to things. And so that if you can get the oil, you can make a roller, you can diffuse. And for those who can swallow capsules, there's also capsules. And I've been taking the capsules, and as I noticed with a lot of doTERRA product, I don't notice a huge difference, except when I don't take it. And then my patience is finished at 4 o'clock. And that was probably my normal. But now, the other day I tested 2 days, I was like, there was a total meltdown in my home at 3 o'clock. I said to my husband, okay, I'm not testing this anymore. I'm just taking it to support me for now. And so this is a beautiful Adaptive. And then this Thinker, which I'm quite new to, so I recently got it. But I read it helps with household chores. I was like, how does a roller help with household chores? But I have noticed for me, as someone who's ADHD, boring things are hard to do, very hard to do. And it's not Thinker. I think it's actually probably frankincense. But I noticed I was taking it for health reasons. And suddenly I cleaned the kitchen. I didn't half do the job. Or like I would noticeably notice shifts that in the past would have been drudgery and hell to try and get to the other side of, happened easily. And if you are, I don't know how many of you are actually, I know there are quite a lot of people who already have oils. That is product of the month and can come with your order if you place it today. Today's the last day you can get that product free. And I just wanted to share, I'll come back to this. Oh, I've skipped. This was a mother who actually had Thinker in her cupboard, but forgot about it. And we were chatting about health with her son. And she said, oh, I've got it. I'm going to try. And her little boy, they were looking to remedial this and what's wrong with him. And he's had 3 weeks of doing Thinker twice a day because his writing is so illegible. And this she sent me, the teacher, why have you kept this beautiful handwriting a secret? And the teacher's been helping her by applying it 2 hourly in the day. And they are blown away at the child he gets to show up as now with this support. So I just wanted to share that. She's promised to send us first writing, but we haven't seen it. So there's just like, and there are alternatives. I wish I'd known in the past that there were alternatives to just medicine or not medicine. And I know there are other ashwagandhas and things, but I've just been blown away at the gifts. And I've been using these primarily for physical support. And then I've just seen the side benefits. Another roller that is In Tune, and that is, I can share a little video, but that's incredible. Also concentration, their hormone balance, sorry, I left the H off, anxiety, all these things, and that's 10% focus and concentration. And that roller can be diluted for younger children. One roller can be diluted up to 4 times. So you buy one and you can split that into 4 rollers. And so those are just some of the key products that doTERRA has in its ensemble around concentration and focus. And again, useful to use while you're studying, and then to apply when you're writing. So is that, where am I? Okay. So I just want to share with you, because essential oils are essential oils, aren't they? Aren't essential oils. So I've discovered doTERRA, which has been my big, honestly, it's felt like a gift from God. I saw it and thought it was only in America. And then through an experience of my child needing support to avoid hospitalization for lung stuff, oxygen levels, this lovely lady, Nikki, I'd just gone for a walk with her. I phoned her. I said, do you have an oximeter? And she said, yes, I arrived. And she had a diffuser and she had this. And 2 days later, my son was back at school. And with the oximeter, where we had been told to monitor oxygen levels, every time they started to drop, I would put his breathe rub on his chest and feet. And within a minute, his oxygen levels were up by 3 to 5%. And so that was me sold. It took a while to commit, but doTERRA is, as I've said to you, pure. It's literally pure nature in a bottle, which makes it so user-friendly. And I personally love the company's ethos and commitment, a bit like the intentions around our study. They recognize that how we treat the people who pick them and grow them impacts them. And so they're very committed to healing of people and the planet and blessing those who create them as much as those who use them. We also, if you choose to sign up to doTERRA, we have classes, support. There's a team, 5 years of team, who is very committed to education and empowering people to find what's best for your body and your family. This is not a one-size-fits-all journey. It's about an empowerment journey to understanding what your needs are and how best to meet them. And then the beautiful thing is doTERRA is very committed to research standards, medical level research, which is possible now because they test all their oils, whereas before an oil of lavender picked here and mixed there, and they, because of the testing, are able to now really begin to show the research and incredible power of these oils. And I've just put this here to mention, because I know some of you from Neurodiverse, I do have a link to a special needs class that was recorded some time ago that I can happily share with you more specifically if anyone wants. And you can reach out to me. My number's on one of the slides coming up. So the last thing, how much time have I got? 5 minutes, let's land this. Is holding space. Okay. Without only focusing on ADHD, but I do want to go, this has the fundamental groundwork to shift everything else. The way we connect and hold space in relationship. But as parents, it means we have to do the work, because our children, specifically ADHD children, are reading the vibe. They're not reading what you say or how you act. They are reading the vibe, which means you've got to get in touch with what's truly going on in turn, because they're going to reflect the truth that you, not what you say. So they are these magnificent invitations to higher sensitivity and awareness in ourselves. But in the context of studying, I've shared Dan Siegel's healthy mind platter, and he created this in kind of the sense of what does a healthy plate of food look like to support a healthy brain. This is ideally what we need to be getting every day, which looks tiring to even look at, but there's real opportunity for, first of all, with sleep. Like I was saying to the matrix, don't think sleep is in the way of your study. Sleep is integrating and learning. Your brain is processing, wiring up. Fundamental, it needs to be part of your study thing is your sleep. Are you getting it properly? Physical time, also, I was mentioning there's a book called, I think it's called Switch. I read years ago. No, it's not Switch. I can't remember now because I must have read it 25 years ago. But it was about how when they moved kids' PE lessons to an hour before their hardest lesson, maths or whatever, the marks increased by 10 to 17% without anything else happening. So to use exercise to intermingle, if you've got to do homework or study and that's hard, can you do something very physically challenging and maybe even combine it with connecting, water polo in the pool, or what can you potentially do that might be fun and connecting and stimulates the brain and body ready for focus time, which is all the study time. Time in is what I've been talking about a lot, is the reflecting, connecting the dots, looking inwards. That, and it doesn't have to be long. I think starting with 5 to 10 minutes of reflection a day can totally transform the rest of everything else. Caroline Leaf also has an app which is amazing for that. I can't remember what it's called, and she's also in a book around supporting children. She has some lovely ideas about younger kids doing it in boxes and using pictures of how you do that internal reflection time. The check-in, you can print off Smurfs, you can print off the inside out characters, like how do you do emotion and internal check-in. The gingerbread downtime is do nothing time. Very bad at this, so I can't really comment that much. Playtime, I'm incredible at. So where are you finding your playtime? And as I was saying to the matrics, be clever with this. I taught a class of 88 kids in that rural school I worked in, and mostly all we did was play 30 seconds, but they had to do it in English, so they learned lots. I heard of a mother the other day saying, I know my child's learning styles and that. Nothing will be written as a book, but we will write it in the sandpit, or we will do it on the wall, or we will write it with our feet. And there are ways to make learning way more. This idea that it has to be a pen and pencil time, I don't think is actually true. And then obviously, I actually think connection is the plateau it all sits on, but I would, because we're all about connection. Okay, wow. Okay, so let me just finish with this. If you want to get oils, I've just drawn up these 2 kits. They're very, I mean, they're not cheap, but they are incredibly focused on the brain. Diffusion being such a good way to get in the brain. If you've got your own diffuser, we can mix and match those for you. The InTune roller, that's off, the adaptive oil, or the capsules, depending. We can send this if anyone's interested in getting oils. You can reach out to me or the person who introduced you to the class if they are a wellness advocate.
Can I just jump in here for a second? Just if you go back to that slide. So as Can says, this is a focus and brain support kit, but it's not just that. Like when you look at Wild Orange is all about depression. It's all about sadness. It's all about cleansing and cleaning. Any citrus oil cleanses internally and cleanses your brain. Peppermint is very cooling. It's good for hot flushes. It's good for headaches. It's good for focus, as we've just been saying. It's lovely as a digestive in tea. It's lovely to put on your tummy if you've got bloating or constipation. Drops of peppermint in the loo can really be supported for constipated children or for women who are having pelvic floor issues. I mean, we even learned this, that they've done a study on this post-birth woman with pelvic floor issues, just drops of lemon in the loo. Adaptive is incredible for adapting to different situations. It's for adapting to life changes. So for postpartum depression, for people who've lost loved ones, adapting to a divorce, adapting to a change to varsity, adapting to changes of school, adapting to moving, adapting to any of those changes that often bring feelings of sadness. And then it's such a focus oil that just regulates the brain. So it's not just your student who will use all those oils, it's the whole family. We recently did a call with one of the other founders of doTERRA in South Africa, and she talked about she fell and had a terrible cut on her nose, and she was saying, you know, she only had her InTune roller with her, and when you look at the ingredients of InTune, it's as good for skin as it is for focus, but it's been sort of branded as a focus roller because you can't say focus skin. This basically it heals. It's just incredible stuff. And then you get that gift of an On Guard roller, which is so good for immunity, for building immunities to stop getting sick, and for boundaries, physical and emotional boundaries. So that's just that kit. There's so much more in the other kits to go into. Candace said to me a while ago, about 6 months ago, what's the Motivate roller for? So I said, well, it's very good for adrenal fatigue. Actually, if you look at the oils in it, it's very good for adrenal fatigue. She comes to me yesterday and said, Nikki, it's not just good for adrenal fatigue, it's good for motivating students. It's got oils in it that's astounding for your motivation. I was like, well, of course, but I'd look at the physical and she looks at the emotional. And so I'm just telling you here that I mean, I cannot, these days, my mind is spinning so much. I cannot sit down at my desk without an adaptive capsules. I've separated, my son uses them for playing golf. Our 14-year-old son, he said he had such a great round. I've seen them with all our kids. We use them before sport. We use them at sitting at our desk. They just, so I just want, the point I want to make, and Kant, you can go on to the next slide of the other oils, is that, like, don't think that you're just spending that money on one ADHD child. These are oils for the whole family and for many needs.
And if I can just speak, I've included Motivate here for a very specific reason. Motivate's also good for people when they're on a long journey. So this is specifically matrics or people who are really working hard on a long set of exams where you need that extra level of demand to keep showing up even when you land up with study fatigue. So that's specifically what Motivate was. It's good for adrenal fatigue. So also if you've got that continual running of adrenals that you haven't learned to regulate yet, that was included there. Do you want to speak into the study and focus? I just want to wrap up because we...
Well, you can wrap up and then I can chat into that. But so basically that's almost my Feel Better Naturally kit. It's the kit that I think should be in every household. It's got the deep blue stick for pain and inflammation, for any aches and pains, headaches, sports injuries, the adaptive capsules, which are amazing for focus and regulating brain, the Intune, so Intune's a strong smell. And I've actually veered away from it in the past because I find it quite overpowering. My husband loves it. He uses it as his aftershave. Like that's his smell. Women smell him and they say, like almost to a T. Women will say, you smell amazing. What's that smell? But I find it heavy to have on me all day. But now I've learned the trick. And because a lot of kids are sensory kids, put it under your feet, especially the big toe. And that's the best way for it to absorb and to be, so that you don't have to smell it all the time if you like it. And you could probably divide it into 3 rollers for kids, because it's one of our premixed rollers, but it's actually not actually diluted. It's a strong smell, so it could go for the whole family, and you could divide into 3 or 4 rollers, and we gift you rollers anyway, and you use it under the feet while you get used to it. Then there's Serenity Stick for sleep, which is amazing, and that's like the best. You can even use it for your pets if they're scared of fireworks or thunderstorms and things like that. You put it under their paws. And then the On Guard, which we've mentioned.
Okay. And the one other option I just wanted to show here, because it is an option and we're doing the whole family, is actually our top 10 kit, which it addresses, we say around 80% of all house struggles. So you've got the lavender for sleep, you've got the peppermint and lemon, that's the citrus we use there for focus. Breathe opens the heart. Frankincense, amazing for grounding and study. So there are all these options. If you're interested, do just reach out. I do have gingerbread journals or the Nature of Emotion cards. Those are 64 cards that come in a set with 2 to 3 words on each. And you're welcome to reach out to me for that. But really, as we finish off, the main thing I would really like to ask, and I can see there potentially questions, so I'll stop the recording and then happily chat if anyone wants, is that you take away one idea and commit, write it down now. 30% more likely to do it if you write it down. What is one action you're committing to out of this? Because if you try 20 or 4, you're not going to do it. So, yeah, so write that one action that you're going to commit to. The others can come down the line. And then you're invited, if you're interested in acquiring oils or you want to know a specific custom kit for you or whatever, reach out to myself or the person who invited you, and we'll connect there. And if there is further support or you would like to dive deeper, you're welcome to also reach out to me privately. And yeah, I hope that's been valuable.
Can, before you stop recording, I think there's a lovely question that came up, and it also came up this morning. Sue was asking, what are good calming strategies for the morning before an exam? My daughter has ADHD. She does well during the term, but then battles when she gets into the exam space.
Okay, so I personally think the oils is a big one, because even though calming, breathing's obviously a huge one. That's different breathing techniques, and Nix would actually be better at all the different breathing. I know there's bunny breathing. They do the square breathing's a very good one. 3 or 4 breaths in, 4, 4, 4 out. So you breathe in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, in for 4. Okay, so that's incredible. But something I was saying we use also is just hands on the, you want an integrating between your prefrontal and back of your neck, so that holding there. Also this activity, you can do, actually you do it on paper if they're in the exam, but doing a side figure of 8 helps that right and left brain. The rocking on your heels backwards and forwards. Now, the big thing here is just back to my point on awareness. One activity will work incredibly well for one child and not so well for someone else. So experiment with it. I know I said to Pips, like set up, a lot of people are doing practice exams at home. Set it up as an exam environment and test one thing and then test something else. Begin to get that. I know tapping here on the chest. Rocking's become a huge one. I always personally have loved rocking, but I've been rocking my son a bit when he's been on my lap, and he says to me, Mom, please do that more, because when you do it, all the energy goes out my body, that buzzy anxiety. And so we rock this way and we rock, and he is 6, he is hard to rock now, but it's so valuable. So finding different calming techniques that calm the nervous system. And it's funny, reflection helps. So it doesn't feel like it, but when our brain is offline, you flip now, oh, it's exam, I've like gone out, to spend 3 minutes reflecting on, especially if it's into the exam, like I feel like this feels hard behind, like put it down on paper, practice your prayer that you've now said before everything, and then write the intention, I'm going to feel like this, I can do it. And so you literally switch from the truth reality check of where you are to where you can go. But you've got to actually face where you are. Does that make sense? Were there any other questions? Okay. I'm going to stop the recording. Thanks, everyone.